Soren Kierkegaard, also known as the father of existentialism, lived in the 19th century and was born on May 5, 1813 in Copenhagen, Denmark. His father, Michael Kierkegaard, was once a shepherd who rose from poverty and achieved a comfortable middle-class position as a wool merchant. He dedicated his new wealth to support his family and to ensure that his children received a proper education by learning at a university. Briefly following the death of his first wife, Michael would develop a relationship with a household maid, Anne Kierkegaard, and conceive children together, yet out of wedlock. Michael's religious devotion increased with each year as he tried to combat the curse against the Kierkegaard name with faith. Yet his belief in the curse would be affirmed, for Michael would live to see the deaths of 5 of his children during his lifetime. Only 2 were able to outlive Michael, Soren and his older brother Peter. They were both astonished that they both survived beyond that age. This may explain the sense of urgency that drove Kierkegaard to write so prolifically in the years leading up to his 34th birthday. His mother, Anne Kierkegaard, was a quiet and plain individual who had not been formally educated, while his father, Michael, was said to have been a devout Lutheran who dominated both Anne and the children's lives and held a firm belief in order and self-discipline. Because of this, Soren's mother is nearly invisible throughout his work. It is noted that throughout Soren's work, his relationship with his mother is the least commented upon and is nearly invisible in his writings, while his father had influenced much of his work. One of the first physical descriptions of Kierkegaard comes from an attendee, Hans Brockner, at his brother's wedding party in 1836.
I found his appearance comical. He was then 23 years old. He had something quite irregular in his entire form, and had a strange coiffure. His hair rose almost 6 inches above his forehead into a tousled crest that gave him a strange, bewildered look.
Kierkegaard's main activities were attending the theater, taking brief carriage jaunts into the surrounding countryside, and walking the crooked streets of Copenhagen to chat with ordinary people. He did not shun contact with the poor, and conversed with everyone from maidservants to laborers. Soren attended Copenhagen University, where he would study philosophy and theology under Hegelian philosophers, of which Kierkegaard would critique much on. His relationship with his father was split because of his refusal to help his mental state. Instead, Soren would rebel by spending money on material items. His father would have to settle the bills, and the young Kierkegaard's behavior further isolated him from his father. Yet in 1838, the death of Michael Kierkegaard influenced Soren, and he embraced his father's superstitious nature, believing that his father died for his sins. He would later return to his formal studious nature and complete his degree in theology. One important figure in Kierkegaard's life was that of Regine Olsen. They had fallen in love with one another and would later become engaged, yet it would be broken off due to unknown reasoning. It is said in his writings that his melancholy, inherited from his father, made him unfit for marriage. On his deathbed, Soren regretted never being married. Soren's main focus was that of a Christian existentialist approach. Existentialism often focused more on what they believed was subjective, such as beliefs and religion, or human states, feelings, and emotions, such as freedom, pain, guilt, and regret, as opposed to analyzing objective knowledge, language, or science. He maintained that the individual is solely responsible for giving his or her own life meaning, and for living that life passionately and sincerely, in spite of many existential obstacles and distractions, including despair, angst, absurdity, alienation, and boredom. According to Kierkegaard, in order for an individual to reach his or her true self, they must pass through 3 levels: the aesthetic, the ethical, and the religious, which give way to one another. These have the potential to conflict against each other, but one should take a precedent over the other, given the situation. The aesthetic is the realm of sensory experience and pleasures. One must seek to maximize these pleasures. The aesthete is only concerned with his or her personal enjoyment, ruled by passion. The ethical causes individuals to act for the good of society. The ethical person considers the effect of his or her own actions on others. It shifts from the personal view to the social view. The religious is the highest plane of existence, concerned with how to be a truly authentic Christian when surrounded by those who are falsely religious. Relationship with God is personal, and the church distracts people from this type of interaction. One is ruled by total faith in God. True faith relieves the psychological effects of human existence. Although Kierkegaard identified with the Christian faith, he believed that the teachings of the churches were wrong, and that faith is a matter of individual subjective passion which cannot be mediated by the clergy. Faith is the most important task to be achieved by a human being, because only on the basis of faith does an individual have a chance to become a true self. This self is the life work which God judges for eternity. If we choose faith, we must suspend our reason in order to believe in something higher than reason. In fact, we must believe by virtue of the absurd. This is mentioned in his primary reading, Fear and Trembling, a retelling of the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac through the pseudonym of Johannes de Silentio. Johannes notes that Abraham is regarded as the father of faith due to his extreme obedience in God. Abraham did not tell anyone of what God had asked him to do, nor did he explain nor question God. He simply did what he was told to do. Johannes brings up the comparison of the tragic hero, who expresses an ethical approach, and the knight of faith, who expresses a religious approach. Yet the ethical approach faces a moral dilemma. The sacrifice of Isaac would be considered murder, and so cannot be understood in terms of the universal. Yet Abraham held an absolute duty to God, so Abraham would suspend his obligation to the universe to obey God's request. Johannes expresses that both give up everything in the moment, yet the knight of faith would take one step forward, known as the leap of faith, or leap to faith, which results in him getting everything back by virtue of the absurd, yet no one can understand the knight of faith. Johannes concludes that Abraham acted as an individual, isolated from the universe, for he did not disclose anything to those around him. Faith requires passion, and passion is not something learned, but requires personal experience, or else we will not understand it at all. Soren would go on publishing many works, such as Either Or, Self-Examination, and The Sickness unto Death. Soren would pass away on November 11, 1855, and would be buried a week later.